I'll join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. Alright, good morning everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? And so brave in the front row. Usually first timers are in the back by the door in case they want to sneak out. What brings you here?
My daughter.
Your daughter?
Visiting.
Nice. And what did she say about this crazy place?
She just said it's very interesting and gives her a sense of peace, so I thought I'd check out.
Nice. I love interesting. It's always such a great word. It is, right? It's interesting. What else? Anyone here for the first time? Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Where are you visiting from?
Pennsylvania.
Nice. What part?
Lancaster County, Philadelphia area.
Yeah. I lived in Upper Darby and Westchester for a year right after college.
Westchester there is where I work.
Yeah, worked in downtown Westchester. The Schuylkill, right? Yinling,
Yeah.
all the...
I need a little peace.
Yeah. Philly's crazy, but I love it. Yeah. What else? Anyone else here for the first time? Great. Those of you keep coming back, why show up? Let's just go to the serious answers and leave the jokes out. What else? Why? Yeah.
To reduce suffering.
Reduce suffering. What else? Why show up?
Trying to make it a practice.
Trying to make it a practice. I just repeat things so those virtually can also hear.
Makes you think about things that are really important and things that aren't.
Yeah. Makes you think about things that are really important and things that aren't. What else?
So you're on community like-minded.
Community of like-minded. That's my favorite one because you assume that everyone in here has a like mind.
Crazy.
Crazy, yes. As long as that's what you mean by that. And knowing you, I knew you probably meant that. Very often people think like-minded people is that this room is filled with like kind, happy, gentle, peaceful people. No offense, but we're all here because we're not that way all of the time. So we're here working on it. So yeah, the like-mindedness is always, the intention is similar, and the level of craziness is definitely, I can relate to that. Anyone else want to share why they're here? All right. Well, it's just important, at least for you as a practitioner, to kind of explore. If you keep showing up here, and a lot of you do, just to ask yourself every so often why. Why do I show up? What inspires me, motivates me to kind of pull myself out of my normal routine and go do something a little bit different. So it's always good to kind of explore that, to just kind of come back to when there's moments where you maybe feel you've kind of fallen out of. Yeah, go ahead.
I like the person I'm becoming.
Yeah, beautiful. I like the person I'm becoming. Yeah. So remembering that, always coming back to that when we feel like we've kind of fallen off a little bit, or we don't always do everything we read about and hear about and listen about. The danger sometimes is people read a book by like Pema Chodron or the Dalai Lama, and all of a sudden they think that they can like embody and be all of that, and then after 3 hours they realize they can't and they give up. So just keep practicing, right? Just keep practicing and working on it. It's a challenge. So, all right. So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. Feel free to say hello, although I can't actually see the chat box at the moment, so you can still say hello, but if you ask me questions, I don't think I'll see it. So a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. You don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Same thing on a bench or chair, just trying to relax your shoulders, hands around the knees or lap. If comfortable, sitting up straight as possible. If you are meditating for the first time, you're not trying to empty your thoughts, you're not trying to go blank, you're not trying to think nothing. You're just going to sit, your mind will race. I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to the present moment. Most important, do not expect anything from this. We're just going to sit and breathe. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. you're ready, slowly open the eyes. Slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. So with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And very often the present moment is filled with chaos, conflict, difficulty, challenges. That's what we get. And so this practice is learning to be with life as it arises, not escaping from it. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it is a practice. It requires patience, requires diligence, things that I know all of you are so good at, especially the patience part. So, for me, I'll pause there. I always really prefer just to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, for those who are joining virtually, I think we might be live. I'm not sure, but I can't see the chat box. So feel free to throw questions in there if you want, and I may or may not see them. But we'll open up to questions. We'll use the rest of our brief time this morning, and I'll respond to whatever's on your mind.
How do
do you practice kindness towards others without being like a people pleaser or pushover type?
Yeah. Are you a people pleaser, pushover type?
Of course.
I didn't know if you were talking about you or somebody else, that's all. Often we ask questions, about a friend. So the question was,
Oh yeah, that's asking.
how do we practice kindness without being a pushover, people pleaser? The Buddhist teachings around non-self and the Bodhisattva practice are really important here. And I'll explain those briefly in a minute. But very often, this idea of being a pushover or people pleaser, what that very often is about, it's not even about them. Why do we want to be a people pleaser? Because we want what? People to what?
To like you.
To like you. I mean, we could be a people pleaser to people we don't even know. We don't know anything about them. But we're trying to please them because we want them to like us. How crazy is that? So in that regard, if you look at it that way, and again, not always, not everyone, not every time, but very often when we are in our minds trying to please people, it has nothing to do with them. We just want them to like us, to feel good about us, to be proud of us, to give us credit. One example, you ever tried to please someone and they didn't like what you did, and then you got angry? So is it really about them or about you? So this is the practice of non-self, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The reason I mentioned the Bodhisattva practice is the teaching of dana, which literally translates to generosity, right? The Buddha said the first thing we can practice to overcome greed, which is the root cause of our suffering, is generosity. We give people time. We give them attention. We give them a heart. We give them a smile. We give them a hug, right? The Buddha said the greatest gift of dana, of generosity, is the practice of the Dharma. Loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, all these phenomenal Buddhist words that you read and hear, right? So in this Bodhisattva practice, Bodhi means enlightened, Sattva being. So in this enlightened being practice, there's a teaching that says we practice generosity without any attachment whatsoever to the gift, the giver, or the receiver. Now, if we practice kindness, and it has nothing to do with them, or us, or what the gift is, this notion of being a people pleaser to ultimately just please yourself goes away. Because you're not attached to the outcome. Buddhist teachings on non-attachment tells us that we are very often attached to the expectation. Right? Now I'm pretty sure this, you were brave enough to ask the question, so I'm looking at you, but I'm pretty sure this applies to just about every person in this room at times. That we do things because it's really about us. We just want to be perceived a certain way. And when that perception isn't met, well, I'm not doing that again. That asshole didn't even like my gift. Right? So, practice non-self. It's not about you. It's actually about practicing kindness towards others for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Just simply to practice kindness. And then there's no one to push over. There's no expectation. There's no attachment to the outcome. You're just simply practicing and giving kindness. And when people throw it back in your face, you know what you do? You give more kindness. Because that's what they need. Not easy to practice, but that's the teachings. Not about us. What else? Yeah.
What are your thoughts about the idea of not having a purpose in life?
So what are my thoughts about the idea of one having a purpose in life? That's the question, yeah? This came up maybe a month ago or so. There's a gentleman over here asked a very similar question. Actually, the exact same question, but it's worded differently. And it's interesting because for me, very personally, for me, with a question like this, I think is the best way for me to respond, is I grew up most of my life miserable, angry, and depressed, and trying to figure out everything and trying to understand why we're all here and what's the purpose, and looking at philosophy and psychology and trying to figure out some grand purpose, right? That drove me crazy, trying to figure it all out. And then I encountered Buddhist teachings and I realized there's nothing to figure out. Just be nice and do good stuff. That is the purpose. Someone asked the Dalai Lama once a very similar question. What's the meaning of this? We're also stuck on this, like the meaning of life. Right? Yep, we treat people like crap all day long, but we want to know what the meaning of life is. And Dalai Lama said, practice kindness. That is the purpose. That is it. But to think that there's some grand thing beyond that, there's nothing in Buddhist teachings that say there is. Because technically, looking at Buddhist teachings, right, at the time of the Buddha, for those who don't know, 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Christ, practiced, raised in India, for the most part, everybody at that time believed in, whether you call it rebirth, reincarnation, continuation of consciousness, they believed in the cycle of rebirth. So the purpose wasn't to attain everything and find some ultimate happiness. The purpose, as he taught, was to free yourself from the cycle of birth and death, because once you're born, you're guaranteed to suffer. And the only way to get there was to stop harming self and harming others. Again, all coming back to the root, which is practice kindness. That's it. Which is a good thing, because that's hard enough. Man, if there was anything harder than that, be in trouble. So, just dropping the idea of there being some grand purpose was very liberating. It said the Buddha taught two things: cause of suffering and the ending of suffering. That's it. You ever seen City Slickers? It's all about one thing, right? I don't want to ruin it for those of you who haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, just watch City Slickers. Great movie. Billy Crystal and I forget who else. Midlife crisis. So these 3 or 4 dudes go on some adventure to figure out the meaning of life. And in 2 hours, you will get the absolute meaning of life from Billy Crystal and friends. Don't ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it. So, great movie. Yeah. What else?
Going back to her comment and what you said, I don't know that I can think of a time that I've ever just been nice to be nice and it wasn't about me. So how do I do that?
Yeah. I didn't want to outwardly, I'm not usually too, I don't censor much, so I didn't want to outwardly just say all of us do that all the time, because I'm not typically trying to offend people, although I often am. Because that means it's working. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because to paraphrase what you said, for those who didn't hear it, I think what you said was you don't remember a time where you were trying to do something for yourself that it wasn't always about you. And so your question is, how do we break free from that? First is to recognize, honestly, the same way, is every single thing you're doing out of kindness always coming back to you? Spend the next 6 months watching that. Every single time you do something out of kindness, what's at the root of that?
Makes you feel good.
Makes you feel good, sure. And there's not inherent. Let me add this at this point too. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything inherently wrong or bad. Or if you're new to Buddhism, it doesn't mean you're a bad Buddhist or a bad person, that you feel good for doing good things, right? I'll come back to this in a second. But as an example, very often people talk about, say, the food redistribution here, right? We do that every week, and people often say, oh, I love doing it because it just makes me feel good. Is that wrong? Right? There's nothing wrong with feeling good from doing good things. But if your pure motivation behind everything is solely to make yourself feel good, then begin to really deeply explore that. Then the question is, once you begin to explore that, how do you break free from that? Oh, do you have an answer? Because I got nothing. Yes.
I have a suggestion.
Meredith to the rescue.
No, but the only way that I've, in recent memory, been able to actually experience doing something for the benefit of someone else, that had absolutely nothing to do with any warm fuzzies or anything for me, was the food redistribution program and going downtown and distributing food. I did it for a year. I didn't go downtown. I refused. I didn't want to.
Right.
I knew it was going to upset me. Didn't want to do it. Didn't want to deal with it. Didn't want to see it. No contact. None of it. Perfectly happy staying here, making sandwiches, and cleaning up the temple. And finally, circumstances presented themselves where I had to go downtown. They needed another car. And I went. And I still didn't want to go. And I still didn't want to be there. And I still wasn't comfortable. But was it a good thing to do for the people down there who appreciated getting food? Yes. Right. Did I get through it? Yes. Did I have warm, fuzzy feelings afterward? Absolutely not. But did I die? Was it the worst thing I probably will ever have to go through in my life? No. But I got nothing personally warm and fuzzy from it.
Yeah.
And then I went and did it again.
Yeah. So, and then you went and did it again. So I think the lesson, go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, I said and again.
Yeah, I think the lesson here that I may or may not have eventually gotten to, but that just made it easier, is to do a bunch of stuff you don't like. You don't want to do. To at least experience that practice of like, okay, yeah, it's true. Like, we have a million things to do all day long. And let's say we're going to spend 3 hours each day, whatever our practice is, of practicing kindness and doing good things and trying to be these good little human beings. So we're picking and choosing what we want to do because it makes us feel good, or we like it, or it presents opportunities for us to, boost our ego or whatever it is. But then go do stuff that you know is good that you hate or you don't want to do or makes you really uncomfortable. Within some boundaries and safety, of course. I often tell people when they ask about patience, we don't practice patience by reading another book on patience. We practice patience by putting ourselves in situations that require patience. So similar way, I think, begin to find things in your life that might benefit others. Again, I'm just paraphrasing what Meredith said, really. That you don't want to do, and you're not going to enjoy it and get nothing from it, but somebody else will. And see what that's like. And I think only from that experience, then you'll determine, what's this about? And why am I so stuck on doing things for others that make me feel good? And why do I have such an aversion to doing things for others that make me feel afraid or scared? Again, I don't mean safety-wise, but that challenge me, I guess, maybe is a better way to put it. So,
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Don't most of us do it when you're dealing with a baby or a small kid? You're not expecting anything in it.
Yeah. I mean, changing that baby's diaper, they're not going to give you a high five and say thank you. But we do it for years. I mean, I have no idea what that's like, but I imagine some people do that for years.
I've done that.
Yeah, you've done it, and you're still doing it, right? And not once has the baby thanked you. Yeah. So, yeah, stuff to explore. And I think as a practice with everything around these teachings is to begin to look at okay, what am I comfortable with? What am I doing? What makes me feel good? What am I uncomfortable with? What am I doing? What doesn't make me feel good? And begin to challenge yourself a little bit. Push the boundaries. Again, being safe, of course. Yeah.
I'd say on this, I also experienced this in relationships where they're already incredible relationships where the love can't. There's really no work really to push it, and doing things for people who I really have nothing else to gain. The relationships are already so great that helped me get familiar with that feeling. Basically, the only good thing about this is that someone who I really care about is happy about it, and then I think from that I can, with some difficulty, see how that can apply to people who I don't know anything about.
For sure.
Seeing how that motivation feels.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, in a similar way, things that we are doing that initially may bring us some joy and some happiness and fulfillment, which is good. These are good things, folks. Again, if you've never heard me, I'm not saying these are bad things to have these feelings. It's good to feel good for doing good, right? Just say it that way. But I do think in time that early on we may do things that are like, it's all about me and I feel good and it's helping me. And then I do think that kind of wears off. And then you're just doing certain things because you know it's a good thing to do, but the ego isn't there so much anymore. The attachment to the feeling isn't there so much anymore. My master always said, when you're miserable and depressed, which was every single day, go help people. So I started to help people, and I was like, man, I feel better. I'm glad you got what you got, but I feel good, right? And then eventually you're no longer miserable and depressed, so you're not even doing it for you anymore. You're just actually doing it for other people. So that, for me, also, I think was beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw on Facebook this morning that you're celebrating your anniversary of working with the prisoners. And I was wondering what was the best experience or what was the most you got out of working 20-something years with prisoners? Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm not, just to clarify, I'm not actually celebrating my anniversary of working with inmates. I'm celebrating who I may or may not, this person can, secretly give me a nod, whether I want to embarrass this person or not. But I was actually celebrating them receiving the Volunteer of the Year award from the Federal Bureau of Prisons for their service in prison. And so I started that by talking about my history with it. And that's exactly what I was talking about. I just didn't give context to it. That, 21 years ago, Venerable Leisure, somebody said they were leaving to out of the country for 2 months and somebody needed to take over the prison program. And I'd been at the temple all of 2 weeks, and Venerable Leisure said, Jeff will do it. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing prison work now. And so I started doing it, and I would go in there, and I was just miserable and depressed. And then 2 hours later, I would leave, and I felt amazing. And it became a big part of my life where I did it. And early on, it was nice to be there, but it was all for me. I was like, I need this practice to be healthy. I need this practice to not be so miserable and depressed. And then that eventually just faded away, and then you're like, I just love being of service. And so I guess I will embarrass him. That's Wayne. Hi, Wayne. You want to say hi? That's Wayne. Come on, Wayne. Let's embarrass you, I guess, since I brought it up. So Wayne, now, I said 5 years, but has it been 5 years, 6 years?
6.5 going on Saturday.
Okay, my fault. Time flies when you're having fun, huh, right? But 6.5 to 7 years, and, which is crazy because in all the years that we've been doing this work, we've never had anybody actually win the Volunteer of the Year award from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And so I think really an incredible honor and tribute to Wayne, and not just the Buddhist group that we're leading in there, but he's gone on to lead multiple classes and just, in a way kind of built a life in there as somebody who gets to go in from the outside. Which again is an incredible act of service, and it's not about, I know Wayne, it's not about Wayne at all. It's just being of service to the people in there. And I think for me, one of the greatest experiences, there's been many, but one was when a guy said, nothing changes if nothing changes. Super simple, but I'll never forget that. Another was doing a meditation training in there and training 5 guys how to facilitate meditation so they could do it every day on their own. And after the training, I told the guy I was proud of him. And he looked at me, he was probably 30-something years old, and kind of tears in his eyes, and he said, no one's ever told me they're proud of me before. So it's really shaped and shifted the way I look at people. I've worked with people who've murdered, I've worked with people who've raped, I've worked with people who've done the most horrific things you could imagine. And it's really shaped and chiseled away at the judgments that I would have towards people for things that they've done, because I'm no better than anybody else. So I think that overall message of we've all done things that hurt people and harm people, some worse than others. I'm not trying to compare what we do to murder and rape, but there's a lot of harm being caused in the world, and we've contributed to that harm as well. So who am I to judge anybody else? So I think just that message. Wayne, what do you think? What's been the most profound for you since we've already put you on the spot?
I started out doing it for me. There's no doubt about that. I knew that in order to feel good about myself, I had to be of service. But after a couple of years, it was and truly is about being service to these individuals. And even though it's about them, I continue to learn about myself every time I go there. That's not the underlying intention, but you hear the stories and realize that you're no different than they are. You're no better or worse than they are. The circumstances that they were subjected to led to some decisions, and sometimes decisions that were 15 minutes of anger led to that, and you realize that you've had 15 minutes of anger, but you've been fortunate enough to be in situations where that hasn't landed you there. So, there's some amazing individuals in there that are just being silent and not given the opportunity.
Thanks, Wayne. Other thoughts? Yeah.
I feel like I've been struggling with ego a bit recently. I recognize that I have so much to learn from here, but I also want to share that with people I care about. But sometimes that can lead to me kind of going off on a rant, and I was told by a close friend recently that it feels a bit like I'm kind of attacking their character in ways. And so my question is, should I, from a place of care, I'm trying to be a positive influence, but should I be seeking that? And how can I, and if so, how can I be a positive influence without, introducing all those other problems?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It somewhat relates to this and somewhat not, but I'll go there anyways, because what comes to mind is the expression I started saying years ago called Buddhist arrogance, where, and you've probably heard me talk about this, where, when I first started, all of a sudden, I'm a couple months into this, and now I'm judging all the people I was just hanging out with, because now I'm going to my Buddhist thing, and I'm learning about loving kindness and compassion and taking care of myself, so now I'm looking down on the people that I was just doing all that stupid shit with last week. And I think I'm better than they are, So you have to, which you kind of said this in your question and comment, is definitely check yourself, your ego, your pride. And again, the practice is to be of service, to benefit, to help others, but I'm sure you and all of us have been in a place in our lives where we were struggling with something. And very often in those situations, there's nothing that we hate more than somebody coming to us and telling us what we should do or what we need to do, especially when it's a loved one. For some reason, we'll listen to absolute strangers, but somebody who's known us our whole lives and loves us gives us brilliant advice, and we're like, nope, sorry, not listening to that. But the stranger over here, I'll listen to, So I think you just want to be, my suggestion is just to be a little bit careful with nobody, and you didn't even say this, but I'll just throw it out there. Nobody cares how much you're into your meditation, how much you're into your Buddhism. Nobody wants to hear all your crap when they're struggling. You want to be there for them, just be there for them. Be there for them and listen to them and kind of hold them metaphorically without dumping your journey on them. Nobody cares in that moment, for the most part. And this is very difficult because mental health, emotional health, spiritual practice, whatever, leads you to something like this, your therapist, whatever it was that got you all here, that's for you. And this journey with meditation and discovering yourself, it's different from like going to a restaurant and you're like, man, I went to this restaurant and these burritos were incredible. You should try them. Most people don't have a problem with that. But when you're like, hey, I've been doing this spiritual practice, this meditation, this Buddhist stuff, they're like, yo, I'm good. So a little bit different than kind of sharing your likes for food or a movie, especially when they're struggling. So again, try to take the you out of it, which is hard. And this comes up a lot with with huge recovery programs here, as you know. This comes up a lot with addiction when we see loved ones, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, parents, whatever it is, that are struggling with addiction. And you can tell an addict over and over and over again what you want them to do, what you think they should do, how they can get help, but that addict's not going to do it until they do it. And you often run the risk of actually just pushing them further away by telling them. So it is a balance of showing that heart and emotion and letting them know you're there for them, but not making it about you. Not easy. Does that make sense?
It does,
Yeah.
It seems pretty tough.
It is very tough, but, in this situation, I've found it helpful to let people know that you know and love that are struggling. Two things. Let them know you're there for them. If you ever need anything, I'm here for you. And the second thing is, if you have a practice that's working for you to deal with your anger, your stress, your anxiety, your sadness, your depression, then you do that practice for you. And you let your way of being kind of be the message. Not the words, not the telling people where they should go or what they should do or what works for you. Because they're not you. They have to find that on their own, just like you find it on your own. So, yeah, super difficult. Yeah. What else? We'll do one more before we close.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What would be your recommendation pulling in this practice for those of us who are spending most of our waking hours at our jobs?
Quit. Just kidding, don't quit. The question was, what do you recommend for most of us who spend, most of our waking hours at our jobs? I said quit, but don't quit, keep your job. Unless you hate it, then quit, but that would suck also, because then you'd have a hard time eating. So keep your job either way. I think you have to I suggest you learn to bring two things. One, bringing the practice into work. Meaning, you can work 15 hours a day, 18 hours a day, whatever it is. You still got to eat. You still got to brush your teeth. Neither one of us has to comb our hair, right? So we're past that. But you still go to the bathroom. You have moments in your life that are not working. If it's 5 minutes, if it's 3 minutes, if it's 2 minutes, whatever it is, create a space in your life that is your time to sit and get quiet, whatever that means to you. But I'll close with this thought. Buddhist teachings on middle path is really important, finding a balance. And I've been a workaholic my whole life. I know what that means. So, one, from a livelihood standpoint, it also helps to create a livelihood that you enjoy. That's one aspect of it. To try to create and build a life that you enjoy, to where you don't need to take a vacation because you're actually just doing what you love. There's no need to get away from anything. And the second part is, since most are very far from that, is to create gaps in your day. If you work 15 hours a day, you have 5 minutes, right? You've seen that, I'm sure, meme out there that says, if you don't have 10 minutes a day to do a meditation, then you need to do it for 20, right? Like, we'll prioritize. I'll never forget years ago, Ken St. Pierre, downtown, we were doing the Dharma Bum Life program, and I was like, you sure you have time for this? And he said, he was one of the busiest guys I've ever known. And he said, I make time for what's important to me. And what that means is, I know you well enough to know that no matter how much you work, you do a few things other than work. So prioritize yourself. Mental, emotional health, and well-being. Put yourself. I know Buddhism is trying to get over the sense of self, but we have to get to know the self before we can cut through that ego. So prioritize yourself. Make yourself, your mental, emotional health, and well-being, your spiritual journey, a priority. Right? Just as much as eating and sleeping, exercising. Right? Mind, body, spirit. I mean, that's it. Regardless of what your journey is. So I'm all for working a lot, but if it's burning you out and killing you, what's the point? Take care of you. You're worth it. Totally. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, a few quick announcements before y'all head out. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night, different practices going on, different people leading from a different Buddhist tradition. Every Thursday, except this Thursday, we do a food redistribution program at 4:30. I still think it's one of the best programs around here. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on the streets. So anytime you think your life sucks and you kind of lack gratitude for all that you have, feed people that sleep on a sidewalk, and it tends to put things into perspective. And if you absolutely hate and have a fear of going, Meredith is proof that you will survive. So talk to Meredith. I mentioned briefly this Thursday, so we are, many of you know, but if you didn't get the memo, we are renovating the downstairs meditation hall. Many of our recovery groups meet down there historically, and what we thought was great when we built the walls 6 years ago to separate Buddha for You from meditation hall, we thought, a space that held about 30 comfortably as a second meditation hall would be plenty big enough. It's not. So 2 days ago, we tore down that wall. We're moving it over about 10 feet, and we're close to doubling the size of the meditation hall downstairs. But that work just started the last couple of days. So we're hoping 7 to 10 days tops, but you just never know with these things. But so Buddha for You is closed. The food redistribution program this Thursday, 50-50 on whether or not we'll have it. Most likely we won't have it this Thursday, but just check all the website, social media stuff, and we'll let you know. But so it might not happen this Thursday. Everything else scheduled is normal. Even the night classes that meet down there will just meet in the dining area, so that'll still happen. But there is a show-you screen up, so please just don't even go down there right now. You can go to the downstairs bathroom, and then the big screen that says "Do not touch." If you're the one person that wants to move that because you think you can and go look through, yeah, it would be you. Don't do it. So just leave that there. Thank you very much. Also, we are walking in the Pride Parade as a temple. So Saturday, July 20th, we will walk as a temple. If you go to the website, you go to the top right corner, it says Pride Parade. Click on that. It'll take you about a minute. You put your name and email in if you want to join us. That way we can communicate with those who want to walk. That'll be Saturday, July 20th. And then 2 days later, on the 22nd, we have vowed for the rest of our existence as a temple to help the day after the Pride Festival and clean up Balboa Park. So the Pride Parade is awesome to walk in for those who want to walk, and for those who also want to, or separate to want to help clean up on Monday, you can register there as well. It's the day that they need the most help because everybody's just had a blast for a week, and then the park is a mess. So we're going to help clean it up. Otherwise, for today, would love 2 to 3 people for probably about 15, 20 minutes. If you want to meet me out front, you need a couple people to sweep out on the side here. Otherwise, enjoy your day.